Hello, everyone. I am Stephen Drew from the Architecture Social, and it is nearly Christmas. So I've got my Christmas t-shirt on, which says it's the time to be sleeping. But we got more important things because there's no point us sleeping now because there's something happening in the world of architecture. Is it this world? Is it another world? Who knows? But we'll try and get to the bottom of it. And we'll try and learn something together. I'm talking about the world of NFTs, or the Metaverse. I'm talking about what you might have been hearing on social media, what you hear a lot of people have divisive opinions of. Some people saying, what a load of rubbish. Other people going, this is the future. You're going to miss out. Oh, we will talk all about that today. And I am joined by an architect of the Metaverse, someone that knows more than me. And that is the whole point, because we can learn together. So I'm joined by the fabulous Fatemeh Monfared. How are you today, Fatemeh? Are you okay?
Thank you. I'm great. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Madrid, so I'm doing great.
You're in Madrid?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. This is like deep southeast Lewisham. I'm going to be going to Wales next week. But I tell you what, I didn't know how to introduce NFTs. But what I will say before we jump into it, for the last 2 weeks, I have been going down that rabbit hole of research, that like mad world, and it's been really, really interesting. But for anyone that is not familiar with yourself first, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, and then we can talk about NFTs and stuff?
Awesome. Yeah, sure. Well, I'm an architect. I got my master's degree here in Madrid. And soon after, I started working in the NFT and Metaverse space. And
good for you.
Yeah, basically, it all just started with a friend of mine coming to me and saying, "Hey, well, I have a guild, which we'll get into later." I mean, like,
okay,
and he's like, "Well, we need to design the headquarters of our business in the Metaverse, and do you want to do it?" And I'm like, definitely yes.
So cool.
It started from there, and here I am.
Well done. Good for you. That's awesome. Now, I used to be, you mentioned guilds there. So I played World of Warcraft when I was like 18 for years and years and years. Now, that is a video game where you can be involved, but the video game designers actually design it. Now, my understanding with the Metaverse, it's very, very different. So there's one that I've been following called Decentraland. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, it's very interesting, and people can go on it on their browser, and they can go on Decentraland, and they can browse around. Well, I'm going to be honest, the graphics compared to the games even though I was playing years ago, not the best, but that's not the point. But that's not the point, really, is it? And it's very early on. But so, what Metaverse is your friend on about where this guild should be? Just out of curiosity.
Well, the guild is investing on different projects that have their own different metaverses, but their headquarters is in Decentraland.
Okay. Yeah. So it is in Decentraland. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So for anyone listening, you should totally check out Decentraland, and you can see a bit what we're talking about. Now, okay, that's cool. That's interesting because it reminds me these kind of things a bit like, do you remember Second Life? It was a big thing. Everyone talked about it. Definitely. It reminds me slightly of that, but there's a big difference in Decentraland because, and we got to go slow here because I'm afraid I might blow people's brains out because it's confusing at first. But Decentraland, well, it's a bit like a game in terms of how you use it, and you can walk around and talk to people. Yeah. There's a big difference that it's all kind of connected to the crypto blockchain, right? So Decentraland is like an interpretation, or it's like a platform people can use, where you can actually, which is all attached to Bitcoin. So everything on Decentraland has value. Is that a good slight intro to it? Is that how you describe Decentraland?
I would say that it was really good, but I would say that the most important thing about it is not really like the crypto and making money side of it, but it's the blockchain that makes it decentralized. That's why it's called Decentraland. Right. And I think the blockchain is the technology that allows for all of these projects to be decentralized. And that's the cool thing about it. And obviously being decentralized and being on the blockchain, it's also related to cryptocurrency and you can make money on it.
Okay, cool. Right. Well, that's why, and thank you for that. That's why you're the expert, and that's why we're having the conversation, right? Because I'm always learning. I've got like an audio book right now, and I'm kind of learning about it as well.
Really cool.
So, yeah, and then I listen to it on the way to work. I get really excited. So I'm all pumped up. But so when we're talking about Decentraland, the crazy thing about this space is that in this online space, that's just one interpretation of the metaverse. That's just one interpretation of it. There's loads of these metaverses, and metaverses are, I don't even, there's like, is it like one vehicle, one interpretation? That's just like one metaverse, right? And there's a few things which, you know, we're talking about the blockchain, and there's different blockchains as well. But then, as well as the metaverses, you have the actual cryptocurrencies, but separate to that, and the bit that I'm interested in as well, you have NFTs. So what is your, because you've researched this more than me, what would you say is the difference between an NFT and a metaverse, or are they connected?
I think they're connected. So as you said, you have the blockchain, which is the technology, and on this blockchain, the metaverse is built, which I would say is like a parallel virtual world. Let's just like live it like in this wide definition. And then inside the metaverse, you can have assets, and those assets are NFTs. And in order to purchase those assets or make any other purchases within this space, you use cryptocurrency, which is the currency which you do transactions. So I think that kind of like, you know, connects all of them together.
I think you're right. And so when you go in NFTs and people are listening to you and going, Steve, you're a terrible host. You're not explaining what NFTs are. So they're non-fungible tokens. Okay. That is the definition. And they've been around for a while, NFTs. It's just now it's not quite mainstream, but we're starting to hear them more. And so a bit like you can get different metaverses, you get different interpretation of non-fungible tokens. And so at the moment, one of the big famous cases, isn't it, is that so there's a digital artist called Beeple. I quite like his work, but Beeple sold all of his art as NFTs for like 66 million. So there's that's interesting because that's boomed. And I tell you what, and we'll laugh for a second, because there's ones I quite like are CryptoPunk because they look quite cool. And there's like 10,000 images, right, of CryptoPunks, and they look like very they're all pixel art, and I love that from gaming. I wish I knew about them because I would have loved to buy one. But if you bought one in January for like $300, now it's worth $200,000, right? They've kind of
at least
boomed. Yeah. So there's a lot in this crazy space, and I think one of the ways that we can kind of explain it to our listeners is maybe going into a bit more of that journey of how you got into the space. So after your friend mentioned about the guild, and you kind of like, what are you on about with this Decentraland? Do you want to tell me a bit about your journey and what you've been up to and what you've been learning?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I got into it without not knowing much of what's happening. I mean, I knew about NFTs before I started designing the space. I knew about people, and I thought that was really cool. I mean, like, I was reading this article the other day that Beeple was selling his work before he got into NFTs for like $100. And I thought that was really crazy. I mean, like, and I've been talking to artists about how art galleries tend to like take so much advantage of the artists with their commissions and taxes, and overall they earn like a really small percentage of the sale price of the work that they have done or that they have created.
Right.
So I think that that's really interesting, and that's why there's a lot of artists coming into the space, because that's kind of like taking out the middleman and them they finally taking power over their work. So they have the deciding power over it, and that's really cool. and you have these
Yeah.
royalties. So, for example, when you put an NFT to sell, you're putting the price to sell it for, but you also have the royalties, which means that every time it's being resold, a percentage of that comes to you as well. And you can have a percentage between 10 to 20% of that. So let's say that you sell your art for $100 as an NFT, and then in a few months it's being sold for $1,000. You're still getting a percentage of that, and that goes
Yeah.
on
Well,
forever
I mean,
because it's on the blockchain. And that's really cool.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy, isn't it? Because even now I'm looking, there's so many as well NFTs out there, and it's really interesting what has value. So what there's what's really interesting for anyone that's listening, going, "What the heck are they on about?" Go to a website called OpenSea. So OpenSea is a marketplace, isn't it? And you can start to see all that. And there's different ones. It's like Rarible and maybe you could tell me a few, but it's like one's called Foundation. Is that
Yeah, I
right?
think you
It's
can you
Foundation.
can like categorize them into two different marketplaces. Ones that are open,
Okay.
so like anyone could sell their work, and then there are others that are curated. So they're specifically for artists, and you would have to apply to be an artist that sells on their platform. And OpenSea
Okay.
is one that's open. Rarible is another one. Mintable, and then there's Foundation, Maker's Place, or Known Origin, which we could send the links at the bottom of the description for them
Okay.
as well. And I think they're
Okay.
really cool marketplaces. I mean, each one of them has their own specific things. And what's really more important than all of this is on what blockchain they are, because another issue within the
Yes.
NFT space is gas fees. And we can
Yes.
go into that a bit if you want.
Yes, please feel free to jump in. But basically, my understanding is when you want to mint something, and so mint is the term for making something. So if you want to register something on the blockchain, you have to pay the gas price, right? And the gas price is how much it costs to do and all this stuff. And then that's basically how much the currency you have to spend on it. So and you tell me if I'm right, but Ethereum is really, in terms of the NFT space, the primary cryptocurrency used. There are a few others, but that one's the trendy one. That's the one that is OpenSea supports. That's the one that most people use. Is that right?
Yeah, so let me just like get back to it. So you
Okay.
have two different types of blockchains. You have ones that work on a proof of stake, and you have ones that work on a proof of work. This just means that there are some of them that use computational power to approve transactions. That's how the blockchain is sustained. And there are
Yeah.
others that use a staking method where you have to stake the coins, and that's a lot more sustainable. So you don't need to use all of the energy of these computers being running and all the time, constantly. So
Yeah.
that's a lot more sustainable. Ethereum is currently a proof of work, so that's why gas fees, if you're minting on the
Uh,
Ethereum blockchain, are really really high. But you
right.
have other blockchains that are proof of stake, and minting on them is still very sustainable. Like the prices are a lot lower. And OpenSea offers the option of Ethereum or Polygon, and Polygon is a currency that is a proof of stake. So gas fees there are cheap.
Okay. Is that what the purple one is on OpenSea as
Exactly.
opposed to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
right? Oh, well, I'm learning then because I was like, "What's the purple Ethereum?" Which is totally wrong. But when you're like, I'm 2 weeks into this journey. You've been months on, so I'm learning. I'm learning wise wisdom from that, and yeah, because there's a few things. So, and I'll be really, and we're all about being honest on here, right? So, I have a really good colleague who showed me a joke about NFTs, and I was kind of laughing because I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so crazy that people are paying a lot of money for for something which can be copied." And that was the joke at first. But when I went into it, I almost don't agree with that because I, by nature, have this thing where as a kid, I would collect things. I would collect the Pokemon cards, I remember when I was a kid, I opened up and I grew up and my parents always supported me, but we didn't have lots of money. So once a week, I could buy Pokemon cards, right? And one day I opened my pack and I had the shiny Charizard, which was like worth so much. And I opened it, I was like, shaking my hand, like, oh my gosh, I got a chance. All my friends are like, oh my God, he's rich, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's probably worth like £100 then. But I remember that feeling of like, I have a shiny Charizard, and I wouldn't give it to anyone. Not like I would, when I say like, because it was all trading the cards, right? And I wouldn't give it to. I was like, no way. And then I managed to collect the 3 big ones. So I really understand. On one side of me, I can laugh about it because what people who don't believe into it is like, well, why pay £100,000 for people's image when you can copy and paste it? And that's true. But then on the other hand of the scale is that there's only one of it can be one, or it can be lots of editions. But if someone's made a one-of-one version of a painting and you buy it, then you own it in the NFT space. So there's 2 sides of the coin, right? So it depends on what people believe and how they feel about it. So you could still argue that it can be replicated by everyone, but then at the same time, like I feel, is that there's only really one true owner. I mean, how do you feel about that divisive opinion on NFTs?
I think it's such an invalid opinion. I think it has no basis.
Ooh.
Honestly, I'm like really tired of hearing this opinion, and it's just like, well, it's with any other painting. I mean, you see a Picasso in a museum, and I could go and replicate it tomorrow. What's there to say that the value of that Picasso is the value it has? So I think that it's the same with any kind of art, and what this is doing is actually giving you the rights to it, and it's registered in a place. So it's kind of like you have the rights to the ownership of this specific, whether it's a piece of art or a contract.
Yeah.
I've seen all sorts of things being minted into NFTs. I mean, contracts, legal documents, art, whatever you want, like even variables that you can use inside the metaverse. So all of these things, it's just like legal rights to that thing. And a lot of people can replicate it, and there is no way to stop them from replicating it. But the only way to give value to the actual artwork is to register it somehow, right? To have that value of it, and being registered on the blockchain, I guess that's the best way to have that validation that this is a one-of-one designed by this person, and it was registered on this date, and it's mine now.
Well, I love your passion. I'll give you a round of applause. So for anyone joking around about it, you hear the Fatemeh is not impressed. You're not impressed here. You're not buying it. You're not buying it. And I kind of lean towards yourself because I think that yes, you can download the CryptoPunk and you can put it on your Twitter, right? Of course you can, but there's one person that really owns it, and if you really want to look into it, someone can really find it. And that person, if they put it on their profile, in my head, it weighs a lot more than, just the person that copied it, right? And if I'm sure it's up for interpretation, but if I own the NFT and someone copies and pastes it, I don't care, because you kind of know that deep down you're the owner of it.
Yeah, and I guess sorry, but I mean the point of those CryptoPunk NFTs are not just to put it on your Twitter account. I mean, once you own it, then you're a part of a club, and the only way you can be a part of the club is to actually own the NFT, not to put it on your profile on Twitter. So you can download it as many times as you want and put it on your profile on Twitter. Like I can make a replica of a Picasso and put it on my profile, but that doesn't mean I'm a part of a club of really lucrative art collectors. But actually owning a real Picasso makes me part of a club of people who are owning it. And that's a privilege that you can't do by just downloading it.
Well said. Right. I would keep putting the clap thing, but it's going to get bored. I'll get a new sound for the next one. But let's follow on that point, because that's where I'm interested in it. And I'm kind of dabbling with it in my head on the Architecture Social, because the Architecture Social, there's a few components. And just so for you to know, Fatemeh, there's the online forum where it started from, but the website, as well as being like an online directory of businesses, in architecture companies, jobs, events. So there's like this whole like job board, this whole directory. And a lot of it, because of my background in recruitment that we touched upon when we spoke, I've done recruitment for the last 8 years. A lot of the stuff that I do is helping people get jobs. That's what I hope, so, how to get to your CV, the portfolio. And I kind of see that there could be something in the NFT space which really helps that, or if, for instance, like when you said, it's not just an image, perhaps maybe if someone owns an NFT, which is see now I roll out some NFTs and there's a certain amount of them, maybe they're membership tickets, right? Maybe they're some interpretation, because the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is quite a famous one, they have exactly the same thing you're talking about, right? Whereas if you own a Bored Ape, you could actually go to they did like a concert and it was free for everyone that has a Bored Ape, and you could turn up and you can go to it. And also they have like a bathroom. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's like an online bathroom, and members can go and they can draw something on the wall every 15 minutes. And that's kind of like an experience which is only shared for ticket holders. So that opens up a lot of possibilities, right? I mean, what do you think?
Definitely. I mean, I think that that's the whole point of it. It's not like literally just like, okay, I have this image, I put it as my profile, but it's just a new way that society connects, I guess, And I think that's going to be a really cool way to have that. And I believe also in women in the space. I mean, we have so little women in the space, and I'm always like trying to get more, obviously, and just like the support we have in the space as well. And there was this collection that came out recently that I absolutely adore, which is called Women Rise NFT. And I think that,
cool.
having that NFT is not just owning the NFT in itself, but being a part of a group of other female entrepreneurs in the space or in any other space. And that group that supports you to move forward. And I think that, that is the most important thing about it, not just having it on your profile pic on Twitter or whatever it may be.
Amazing. Fair play. I think you're right. More. There's always been a trend, especially in the gaming world, where unfortunately that there's less female people in the space. But if you're not familiar, especially any female architects listening, you should check out the space, because it's such an exciting space. And I agree, it's a bit like actual architecture in the non-metaverse, the physical verse, whereas actually female architects are so important and add infinite amount of value. So it would be quite nice if that was in the meta space, in the NFT space. So, okay, so we've touched upon these, and there's a lot going on. And so for anyone listening to this, you're going to have to keep going into the space, because we're just touching on the surface. And I guess the idea is, when you hear these things that I'm talking about or Fatemeh's talking about, you have to do your own research. And you might agree with us, you might not. However, let's talk about it with an architectural twist for a bit, okay?
Let's do it.
Because, yeah. So, architects in the metaverse, I think you started off with a great example where your friend for Decentraland wanted you as an architect there. I think, again, your brain can go off in different directions, but there's lots of different ways to go about it. One of my, I work part-time at a company called ArchAdemia. One of the directors, Oliver Lowry, very successful. He was like, I can see NFTs working as a way to raise money for projects like crowdsourcing. I was like, wow, I never even thought about that. I see it a bit differently, because I see it more close to, I'm interested in the architecture social. What can I do a bit like the Bored Ape Yacht Club? But then we have the designing in the meta space as well, and all this stuff. So what are you most excited about in an architectural sense that can be done with NFTs and the metaverse?
I think definitely designing inside the metaverse. So there are about like 100 metaverses coming out every single day. It's really crazy to like keep up with all the new metaverses that are coming out. And all of them need design. I mean, they have the basic graphics done, as you said in Decentraland. The graphics are not that great, but I mean, the basics are there. But then you have all these
Yeah,
like
yeah,
plots of land or estates, or you have even sometimes worlds, and they need to be designed. Someone needs to be there to design those spaces. And
yeah, yeah.
like, actually, a fun fact, I was with a recruiter who was showing me how to use LinkedIn to do different things. And he was like, you know what, let me show you a crazy search. And what he did was he searched LinkedIn members, like people who are using LinkedIn right now, that put that they're architects on their profile. And it was like 1 million results that came out. And then he just put like in the search to have metaverse as well. So anything related
Yeah.
to the metaverse doesn't have to be a metaverse architect. So architects that have an account in LinkedIn and also work in the metaverse. The results like went from 1 million to 50. And out of those
Yeah.
50, about like 30 or 40 of them were actually like on the tech side of things. They're not architects as designers.
Oh,
So like designers, architects in the space were so little, so little, like a handful.
I know. I
And
know.
it's,
Do you know how I know? That's how I found you for the podcast. Exactly that. It's like 10 people, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, it's really,
What
really
what
crazy.
and we can hypothesize into why that is. Maybe practice owners are too busy, they're hearing about it, but also, I mean, there's a marketplace coming up called like Renovi,
Ah,
right? Or
yes. Yeah,
Renovi?
yeah, I know about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was quite interested in that, and I'm part of there, and you'd be impressed with me. I'm part of the Telegram group, so I can
Awesome.
just
I'm
follow
there
it.
too, actually.
Oh, you see me join? Yeah, I'm kind of like looking around, doing a bit of research,
Awesome.
and it's really interesting. But the, their battles with the marketplace it's just too much for me, because I was tempted, like, oh, the Architecture Social, it's a directory, maybe I could open up a marketplace, but then,
Yeah.
oh my god, to go into like token
Tokenomics. Yeah.
economies, and yeah, tokenomics, and then like setting up a platform and all this stuff. I spent a few hours researching it, and I was just like, wow, that's probably too much. But I think what I'm interested in it more is like a project like the Board Ape Yacht Club, where it could be on the open sea or it could be on Renovi or whatever. But I don't really want to go into tokenomics, right? I don't really want to set up a marketplace. I mean, how do you feel? Are you like me, where that's like too much, or
Yeah, I mean, I think I think for me, it depends on the project. So depending on
yeah, yeah,
what you want to do with your project, I would say, like, for example, for Renovi, I don't see it doing it any other way. Like, that was their idea. They wanted to create a marketplace for
yeah,
architects specifically, and I think that's really
and
beautiful.
that's kind of cool.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it makes sense that they're getting into all of that and they're investing in that. But then your project, it looks like something that you should go the Board A Yacht Club, like, definitely.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Well, and I respect that. And then, so like Renovi, if you're listening, I'm quite interested in working with you guys, because they can support 3D model files, and
yeah.
that's currently one of the, because when we talk about these right now, like, so the OpenSea, when you submit and you mint, and so mint is the term, isn't it, for like making an NFT. It currently supports a few image files. I forget which ones, but like a JPEG or a GIF. And so you get lots of GIFs, and you've got a few movie files. Then you've got audio files, and then you've got one or two 3D model files. And this is like, I think the kind of the bit that Renovi potentially could solve, because I think there's like OBJ format, and there's like,
GLTF
oh,
or GLB?
yeah, GLB.
GLB, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm totally wrong. It's not even OBJ. It's GLB, which I never even heard of before. And then I think it's like it's a Blender format, and that's limited to 40 meg. So that's a massive, massive bottleneck as far as I'm concerned, because in architecture, models can be massive, right? And Decentraland, which you were on, it's also like a crazily small size there as well, isn't it? And that's one metaverse, surely.
Decentraland, it kind of depends. It depends
Right.
on what kind of plot you have. So if you have
Yeah.
a simple, just one single plot, which is like a pixel, that's 16 by 16. And that gives you limitations of the amount of triangles or polygons that you can have inside. And it also gives you limits in terms of height and like everything. But if you have a bigger plot, then you can have bigger projects. So that kind of like that kind of goes along with how much you invest in it. The more you invest, the bigger you can go. So
got you. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. But Decentraland is not really a marketplace, I would say. It's not like Renovi. Renovi is a marketplace, but Decentraland is like a metaverse where the things that you buy from the marketplace are actually put into experience.
Well, I think who knows, right? But for me, the marketplace thing is just too deep. I kind of looked into it. It's really interesting because you can do it if you want to, and I'm going to sound really geeky to the listeners here, but if you get like smart contracts, I think you can set up a marketplace. But what is the point in setting up a marketplace when you've got people like that doing a marketplace? And also, like, you can have marketplaces for the marketplaces of the marketplaces, right? Okay. And the other thing where I'm going with is that while we're talking about beautiful NFTs, like the Bored Ape Yacht Club's kind of cool, but then you got, and for anyone listening to the Bored Ape Yacht, when we talk about this and go, what the heck am I on about? Then the artwork in there is apes. But then you get like loads of NFTs with apes. So it's like the Angry Ape Yacht Club, the da-da-da-da-da, and some of them are official and some of them are not. And so, unlike CryptoPunks, you've got like CryptoFunks, and that's like an unofficial adaptation on it. So I think what's really interesting is then the marketplace puts their own value on them, right? And they're not as valuable as the original ones. But I guess what I'm trying to say is for the amazing NFTs that are out there, there's a lot of NFTs which, in my opinion, offer no value or they're not that good. And some of them, it's like there was one I was looking at and the guy was giving them away for free. And they were pictures of sea containers in architecture. And they weren't particularly done really well. And they were crappy Photoshops, of these things. And I was like, that's just rubbish. But how do you feel? Do you think that also there's a lot of junk out there as well on OpenSea?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, there's a lot of junk out there. I mean, it's open, so that's why you also have these marketplaces that are curated, and you can get on them when you want to see things that are a bit filtered. I mean, you have places where, and I like that, because I like giving the opportunity to everyone to do what they want to do, and you never know, because maybe something that to you might be like rubbish, to someone it could be something very interesting,
Totally.
So I wouldn't want to take that opportunity from that person to mint whatever they want to mint or whatever they want to show to the world. And I think that's really cool to have the balance. That's why it's really nice that we have so many marketplaces, because there are ones that are totally open. You can do whatever you want on it. And there are very specific ones where they're curated and you have, you can find what you want exactly there.
Well said. Well said. So I guess it goes up to the powers that be or karma for people to put their own value on it. And that's the kind of the super exciting bit and the scary bit, isn't it? So it's like I was reading stories, I should say. The CryptoPunk guys, which is the most, as far as I'm aware, apart from Beeple, who's an artist, the CryptoPunk project is like super high value, but they were giving them away in 2017. No one wanted them, and that's also the interesting bit that I see is that, say now I do a project, the interesting bit which keeps it alive in my head is the royalties, which is mad. The royalties are amazing. So you could sell your first week piece of work for $100, but say now that piece that someone bought from you for $100 sells for $1,000, if you set a royalty of 15%, you get another $100 every time it's sold. And I think that is such an awesome way to incentivize artists. I mean, do you get excited about the royalties as well?
Definitely. I think it's like the revolutionary thing about NFTs, in
Yeah,
terms of art
yeah,
specifically, I think. And that's why we have this huge movement of artists moving into the NFT space. The royalties are a game changer. Like I totally agree on that. I think it's the best thing that could have happened.
yeah. I think that's like to me what is interesting about it because if you sell like a membership
Hmm.
token, then you could actually have like a membership which keeps repeating because when it's sold, the person keeps getting the royalties. So it's really interesting way of like saying, oh, if I set up a club and there's 10,000 memberships and people keep trading them, the royalties would keep paying for the club. Or maybe they don't, but it's a really interesting experiment on, how to do it. And
Right.
I just think it's like so revolutionary because yeah, normally it's the other way around. But and you tell me this because you've experimented in the space, but actually lots of these different marketplaces, lots of these different stores have different fees, don't they? So, and that's what we should say. So there's a fee on the website listing as well as the royalty, but the fee, is it that the fee is just for the first time listing or does it go on? Do you know much more about that, Fatima?
Yeah. I think do you still hear me? Do you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I
Oh,
can
okay.
hear you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I think that depends on the platform. So on OpenSea, you can create a
Okay.
collection, and once you create your collection, you pay the first time when you're minting in that collection, and everything else you don't have to pay.
Yeah.
But there are other ones that you have to pay two gas fees, one for listing and then the other one for minting. And they can be really, really high prices and
Right.
very unsustainable as well. So you have to be very careful with that. And OpenSea is a great place to start, obviously, because you don't have to pay much. And right now on OpenSea you have Polygon as well, so that's really good because Polygon gas fees are really low. So if you're planning to just start to test out something, I would say that's the best place, like the most accessible, most cost-worthy place to start. But then but
Okay,
then you have
cool.
the other ones, like for example on Foundation, you can go up to like $300, $500 between minting and listing. So just to get your
Amazing.
artwork there, it's $500 you have to pay. So that's a lot. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Holy moly. So you need to think about it. Have you sold any NFTs yet? I think you had if I did when I did research at the start, but tell me about that journey. Was it being fun and interesting?
Very fun, very interesting. So the first collection I did was I did a collaboration with a contemporary dancer. So we took pictures of
Oh yeah,
her.
cool.
Yeah, we took pictures of her. It was really fun. And then I did the backgrounds. And the whole idea was like, well, let's try to like do something because she's a dancer and I'm an architect. So like, let's try to do something that relates our two careers. And it was really fun. We loved doing it, enjoyed doing it. And we released three NFTs and two of them got sold like within hours. And we weren't that great at
Wow.
marketing. We were just like super new in the space, and we were just so impressed. The first one was bought by an anonymous buyer that we have no idea who it is, but the second one was
Yeah.
bought by an artist. So like you can see their names and you can go like check out who they are. And we were so curious to know who's interested in our work.
Of
And
course.
she's also an
Yeah.
NFT artist. So thank you to her for purchasing our art. It was really great.
Amazing. Amazing. And I imagine you'll have royalties then on the future sales of that.
Yeah.
And that's what's exciting, right? So currently the artist or Mr. Anonymous owns that right now. But if they sell it in the future, then you will also get a cut of that, which is to me massive. It's huge, isn't it? It's like it's so big a deal that it really helps. Do you mind if I ask what is your royalties that you put? Is it 10% like open seas?
I put 15. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
good for you. Got to be ballsy, haven't you? Huh?
Yeah.
So different platforms, different royalty fees. 15 sounds all right. I mean, yeah, and it's interesting because the buyer doesn't really know what the royalties are till they buy it, right? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
but I think that it doesn't really matter for them because they can just take that into account when they're reselling it, like
Yeah, put the
15%.
price
Yeah,
higher.
exactly. And
Hey, yeah, whatever
the
works,
artist
doesn't
that
it?
bought our work, we found it super interesting. I mean, at first we were like, I mean, this might happen to anyone, so I'm gonna tell the story. She bought it, and the next day she put it for sale at 3.5 Ethereums. So
Yeah, holy
holy
moly! So you
moly,
were
you know,
just
like we were
like,
just like,
yeah,
whoa.
you were just 3.5
Yeah,
Ethereum. So in my head, roughly, and I'm sorry
14K.
because I'm Brit. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a lot of money.
it's a lot of money.
I
And
wouldn't be offended because that's the thing. Because before you might be like, "Wow, I'm outraged," but then when you're getting 15% back, you kind of hope she sells it for 3.5 because then you would effectively make 15%. So you're making like a lot. You're making like what, half an Ethereum or whatever. It's a
exactly,
lot of money.
exactly. I mean, the first reaction I had was like fury. I was just like, oh my God, she's just trying to like, screw us over.
Until you
Or
realize
I
you're
don't know, you know.
15%.
And no, it wasn't actually about the 15% that made me feel like, oh no, she's
Okay.
actually trying to help us, which at the end she was. Obviously, being another artist, I think she's just trying to support our project and what we're doing. She really liked
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So what that does is it brings your price higher, and that helps you sell faster, and so helps you sell
What?
higher your next artwork.
Okay, you can help me with this
Yeah.
then, because I'm not. I don't fully understand the floor plan.
Floor
Floor
price.
plan.
Floor price.
My gosh, I'm getting a floor plan. What am I on about? Huh?
That's all right.
Yeah. Tell me about the floor price for anyone listening. What does that mean?
So basically, the floor price is the price, the average price of the NFTs that you've had that has been sold. So,
Yep.
like, or are on sale. So, like, it gives you the
Yep.
average value of your NFT collection.
Okay.
And what happens is it can be a great thing or it can be a bad thing. Because, for example, with these generative arts or PFP style projects, you have 10,000 NFTs being sold on the market, and someone might just like put
Mm.
it for sale really below market price, and that brings down your floor price, and everyone else has to follow that floor price. If not, you're not selling. So that can be really dangerous. But if someone really likes your project and wants to boost it, then they can bring the price really high, and that brings your floor price higher, which means that your next NFT could be sold at a higher price.
Okay, so you kind of want the trend of you want the floor price to go higher, right?
Yes, you want it to be higher, exactly. And it's like the average price at which your NFTs are being sold or are sold.
Okay. That's interesting. So, and so food for thought there. So, what would your advice be for anyone that hasn't got it, is what was thinking of doing a bit of research? Where should they start at the moment?
I think that the first thing I did was YouTube. I watched a lot of videos, but I don't think
Yeah.
there's anything more important when you're researching than actually experiencing things.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
I would try to invest, even if it's just like the littlest amount that I could, and try to test it out. Like just going on, for example, like right now on Decentraland, you can go as a guest. You don't need to connect any wallets or anything like that. So you can just go
Yeah,
explore
yeah.
the world. And it's not just Decentraland. There are like millions of metaverses out there that I would suggest you to check out. I would just like categorize them into two parts. There are the ones that use voxels, and they're the more realistic ones. And definitely, like what I would do is just try to go check on each of them. Just like get a hang of the space, try to mint my first NFT, like see how that process works. But also like YouTube has been my savior in the space for sure, because I love that interaction, like, I mean, reading articles was really good too. I read a lot of articles when I started out, but that interactive YouTube or podcast thing, that's just way more interesting for me because I learn a lot more that way.
Very interesting. Very good advice there. I think for me, there's two sides to it. There's research in general, but then you can research almost like from an investment standpoint. But then you can also research from the designer in all of us. That reason that we went into architecture, and I think like that side's really interesting. So,
Definitely.
like what NFT can you create that makes value? And I think research is so important because sometimes some ideas have failed. Maybe it was really interesting. I stumbled upon an NFT when I was researching the marketplaces, and someone had build the NFT and the tokenomics and all this stuff, and it didn't go so well. And it was really interesting seeing that journey going into their Telegram. So Telegram's like an app for anyone listening, and seeing people lose interest, and that's that was quite fascinating to see, to go back and see the journey of the hype, then things going wrong, and then people losing interest. And also, yeah, you've got the other ways, haven't you? Like, you can see people talking about cryptos years ago, and it's very interesting. And the other thing I would like to add, just before we open the convo up again, is it's a mad, because you know the way you said about LinkedIn, you search architects, then NFT, and there's like 10 people. That's how I found you. Then also, it's the same thing on YouTube. There's like millions of videos on NFTs. But if you type NFTs and architecture, there's like 4.
Yeah.
And there's like 3 good ones or 2 good ones. And it's by like the 2 biggest channels ever, you know, and it'll be like, I forget it. One guy's called Blessed Architect, and he's like this great like Indian architect. And then you've got like another guy called How to Rhino, and he's talking about it. And I'm just amazed, because I'm like, yeah, it's like, this is so awesome. Yeah. Where is everyone?
Where is everyone? Exactly. That's the same question I've been having.
Where is everyone? And that's why I thought it would be good to do this episode, because bizarrely we're ahead of the curve. But that's mad, because in some sense I feel like the curve is not over, but like the big boom of like CryptoPunk and all that, yeah, that's happened. But one story I'd like to share briefly is, and this is to do more with cryptocurrency. And so I've never invested any cryptocurrency, never done it.
Okay.
Which is crazy, because it's really right up my street. I totally get the tech. I totally am on board. I'm a bit of a geek. I'm interested in this stuff. I never did it. And in 2012, Bitcoin, it went from like worth 10 GDP per Bitcoin to like 300-400 or 500. I forget the actual numbers, but I remember speaking with my friends in 2012. I remember it vividly. I remember what job I was on. And I remember going, we missed the bubble. I was like, I wish I invested some of the money I've got into it. I didn't do anything for years, and it kind of went like that, Bitcoin, didn't it? And it went up again.
Yeah.
And then it went up, and I went, I've really missed it this time, and I didn't do anything. And then it went up again. And I have a funny feeling that even though like CryptoPunk has boomed and there's money to be made and people, the digital artists, has made millions, I kind of think that if I don't do something now, I will regret it again. Because I feel like I've learned my lesson from 2012, and now I caught wind of the NFTs. It took me a while because I've been busy. I've been in my own space. I didn't pay attention, but now I've caught wind of it. I'm like, I'm not going to let it go this time. I mean, does that story resonate with you, what I'm on about, of like where we are in the journey?
Definitely. I think I can totally agree with that. And there's going to be a huge boom in the near future, honestly. Like, I think that, okay, NFTs had a great boom in 2021, but 2022 is going to be a bigger year because metaverses are coming into place in 2022. Like, a lot of new metaverses are coming into place, and that's where the NFTs get their utility in most cases. And so I think there's going to be a huge wave in 2022 as well about all of these projects. And I think this is the best moment for architects to join if you want to design this future world that we're going to be like living in, kind of, And there's a huge lack of designers in the space. I can totally see that there's a lot of people that want to get their spaces built before the end of 2022. So like this past few months are just like really crazy. Like, a lot of people have been wanting to build, but I think this is going to continue into 2022, and a lot of people in the first quarter and the second quarter of the year are going to want to have their spaces that they've had for so long actually come to use, and they want to build things on it. And it can go from someone coming to you to design an art gallery or a museum or their headquarters or a concert space or conference hall, education, whatever you would think that we would have in the real world, you can design that in the metaverse. So I think it's not too
Well
late.
said. Well said. Well said. Okay, amazing. So we're kind of coming to like a good tail end of that conversation. Now, what I like to do at this point is that any of the guests can ask me whatever question that comes to mind, and that can be one, that can be 10. But is there anything you'd like to ask me?
Um, okay, I'll ask you about your NFT project. What do you have in mind for your NFT project?
Okay, since
And
so I
how
will
did you
do. I
find
will.
out
I'll
about
meet. I'll.
NFTs?
Okay, cool. So I'll meet you halfway. So we'll do there's two questions there. So meet you halfway because what I'll do is I'll show you like what I'm thinking after this conversation, and that's for your eyes only. However, for the listeners here as well, I'll tell you roughly what I'm thinking. So going along the Bored Ape Yacht Club, I think that like with the Architecture Social, I do a lot of stuff like mentoring students, like how to get a job in the industry, and that's really like my strength. You know, that's really the in terms of like getting a job when you're a part one or part two, or when you're an architecture student. And also because I've done recruitment for 8 years, I've worked with people in famous companies. I've seen people go from being like a senior architect to an associate. So that's really what I can offer in terms of value. And I think in my head, wouldn't it be cool if, for instance, there was a way, whether there's like membership passes or something in the NFT space? Wouldn't it be cool if people who had a ticket or who had an NFT could have access to resources which are private for members only,
Mhm.
which will help in their career? This could be like weekly chats. This could be like a confidential space as well. But then also, I kind of see in terms of not so much the metaverse, because I'm interested in the real world slash the online metaverse world, and I'm interested in like how they connect. So, for instance, if you had like an NFT that was done by an architect, and you could find out about the project, that could be quite interesting as well. But how would you monetize that? How would it be? How would it keep me going? How would it have a return for the person? That's kind of the quandary. But I
Yeah.
think right now I see it as a membership club, which is more careers focused. So the bit I'm interested in is like how could the digital, how could the metaverse, how could NFTs help people in terms of like their real job and how that interfaces. So that's where I'm thinking. And I'm going to be really transparent and say I don't know all the answers yet. But that's the bit I like because that's the space I'm in. That's what the architecture social is.
Definitely.
So
And I think
I don't
no
have all the
one knows
answers.
the answers yet. I mean, we are all
Yeah,
just trying to figure it out. This is so new that no one has all the answers.
correct. And that's like where my brain's at, kind of work that out. So that's the challenge. And where I found out about NFTs was, I think I heard it in passing, and I scoffed at it. I was a bit like, I did something like that, and it's just like, what is this load of rubbish? And then, but that was so uneducated. You get what I mean? I was just like, I just writ it off for no reason, just being absolutely like whatever. And then a friend of mine sent me a meme, and it was a work colleague, and the meme was something like someone's description on Reddit of NFTs, and it was like, so if you own an NFT, it's basically like seeing the Mona Lisa. And then to find out who owns the Mona Lisa, you have to walk past the Mona Lisa, go into another room, go into the corridor, go through the back of like the area, and you will see a little written label somewhere saying that the owner of the Mona Lisa is user XYZ. And I was like, yeah, totally. What a load of bullshit NFTs are. And then on the back of that, I think I was in bed one night or whatever, when you're on your phone, and I was kind of looking into it, and I was like, what is it all about then? And then I got sucked into it, and so I was like, and then I told my friend at work, I was like, thanks for sending me the meme, but you've inadvertently spurred me onto NFTs.
Yeah.
And their face was like, oh my gosh, because I went back on the joke
Yeah.
of like how silly this is. And I was like, well, I kind of think something's there.
Yeah.
So it was like that for the wrong reasons. And I think what I did at first is I judged it too quickly. And I think that also I judged it by the current interpretation of what's there.
Yeah.
And I think that what's really important for anyone listening about NFTs is, like, as an architect, we solve problems, right? And there's a space here. But what's really weird about the NFT space is, like, I think that the NFTs which offer some value are the ones which will go further. And how you define that value is the $1 million question, right?
Definitely.
That's the interesting bit. So, like what you said to me earlier, which is really interesting, and I said, you've got like the low quality NFTs. You're like, well, yeah, true, but people can decide what the value is. Mm-hmm. And that's right. I put no value on them. Mm-hmm. And then a CryptoPunk, and in terms of the image, before I think it would be nice, but now we know society has put 200,000, 300,000 on there. So there's a monetary value as well as a kudos thing, right? But where in the metaverse is the next value? And where it gets crazy with architects is that we design experiences, we design 3D space. And when you're talking about these online platforms, it's basically like being a video game designer, but you're not. It's worlds. It's like, it's so crazy. So yeah, that's why I get excited about it for me. But I think with me, you won't see me designing the worlds, but I'm lucky just where my life has taken me. I think that if I can do something which offers value, mm-hmm. and also it's because, like, the architecture social, I love it, but it costs money to run, right?
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, and I'm thinking, like, well, if there's like a really cool project which can help fund the servers, help fund the time, and get an investment, and it offers value, then maybe NFTs is the way for me to go, because it solves the problem. Maybe it fails, but if you don't try, you never know, right?
You never know, exactly. And honestly, like, I wouldn't know how to invest in your project, the architectural social, but then when you're talking about NFTs, I'm like, okay, well, we're going to talk after this and maybe I'll be interested,
Maybe. Yeah, well, I don't really hide anything. And so from the public, if they gone like, Steve, are you keeping anything? No, it's because I just got like a concept and I fleshed out here, but it needs ironing out. And I'm kind of there. But once I get the story straight, I'll release it in public, because what I've learned as well is there's no like secret formula, and there's no like, oh my God, I need to hide it because someone else will do it. It's more like, the way I see it is like, anyone can do an architecture marketplace, anyone can do all this stuff, but there's elements which make it different. Because if they're investing in the architecture socials project, it's because people know the architecture social and trust it or whatever, right? Yeah. And when someone's buying your artwork, it's because it's you, it's because of the story, it's your background. It was, as you say, you were with the performing arts, with the dance, you're a dancer friend, and it's like, it's all these little things which make it individual. So people could steal the idea, but then also it's like, I think you just got to go out there and experiment. And I think that the first person that does it will have a massive advantage, right?
Definitely.
Because they're the first.
Definitely. I think I can totally agree with you. And I think that, there's still time for a lot of firsts, because as you said, you can specialize in so many things, and there are a lot of places where there's still time for innovation. So I would really encourage people to just like experiment and get into the space, even if it's just like, for a little while, if you have the time.
Yeah, no, fair play. I'll tell you what, I'm going to leave one final thought, and then before, you can tell us where you are and, how people can find you. But the last thought that I have is, think of architecture student projects, right? I've done it in my part 1, my part 2, yeah? You spent hours on these projects. They're like work of art, yeah?
Definitely.
And then what happens when you qualify? You show them in your job interview. And then what happens? Yeah. That seems like, to me, an interesting problem to solve. Yeah, why can't that be something, right? Why can't that be championed? Why can't that be something?
For sure.
So I think there's something there. And it's funny because in my head, how many students have all these projects that are sitting on hard drive somewhere?
A lot of them.
Yeah.
And it's not just students, even really high-end architects. They only get to build 40% of what they do, what they design. The rest are sitting in archives.
Very good point. So it's not even just students; it's practices, and I think that's what I'm interested in. Is like that space, and less about a marketplace, less about claiming the people's projects. But imagine there was a way to kind of see those projects. That's what I'm thinking. So there you go. That's my kind of thoughts on it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Tell us about yourself. Where can people find you? Where can people reach out?
Well, I'll definitely link in all my social accounts, and I'm super happy to talk and assist anyone anytime. So just feel free to contact me at Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever it is. And I'm happy to help. And also, like, I'm writing a few articles about the space as well. I publish them on all my social accounts, so you can read them. And I'll be giving like more detailed research into it. It's specifically for architects. It could go bigger later on, but it's definitely just for architects for right now, and how to get into the space and where to work and stuff. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Fatemeh. You've been an absolute brilliant guest.
Thank
so
you.
Please do reach out. And if anyone is struggling to find Fatemeh, you are like number 3 on LinkedIn of like 12 people who do architects in the metaverse.
Yeah.
So if in doubt, you can find her there. Thank you so much. Stay on the line. I'm going to end the podcast now.
Awesome.
And we will see you soon. Take care.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, I got to turn my mouse back on. My mouse has gone dead during the thing. Don't worry, guys. I'll be closing down the podcast now. Okay. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.